All right, I want to talk about something about this Chavacano in regards to pronunciation notes. Um, when I was reading the literature, right, on the literature one, you can see that there's some differences in pronunciation and versus the orthography or the spelling, right? Um, a lot of a lot of modern day Chavacano speakers will speak Chavacano in a really weird way because of English influence. English and local languages that influence it. So it changes the pronunciation of Chabacano in a way. I'm gonna read you this paragraph, and I'm gonna on the bottom. I'm just gonna keep some notes about, or talk to you some notes about the letters and pronunciation and how the orthography differs from the pronunciation. Triste si Amina, un hija y tejera yakan, acordando con el vacilan, pero ya encuentra la inspiración para con su luma la diversidad de suyo nuevo ciudad, el Zamboanga. Just keep in mind that pronunciation, okay? And then that's just a sample. But down here, I want to talk about some pronunciation notes about Chabacano Zamboangueño. The CION endings, the Sion endings, a lot of Chabacano speakers have that tendency to make it from a Sion into a Shon, right? It's two syllables. This ending is two syllables, but many Chabacano speakers have that tendency to pronounce it as one syllable. From Sion to Shon, right? Sion to Shon. Example right here. Inspiración, right? And instead of pronouncing it as inspiración, they will pronounce it as inspiración. That shon, that sh sound in English, is that influence that we're seeing in Chabacano's changing or pronunciation. So originally as inspiración, but because of English influence, they say inspiración, right? Which means inspiration, right? And it works in English, but Chabacano is changing. It's changing with that pronunciation. It's from inspiración to inspiración. So that's just one thing that Chabacano speakers are not aware of. They just do it subconsciously when they speak. So they take that English influence and they change it into a shon from a sion. It's the same with this kind of beginning, the CI, the CIU, right? So, for example, ciudad is three syllables. Ciudad, right? Ciudad. But Chabacano speakers have that tendency to shush it, right? So they'll say ciudad for two syllables, right? Ciudad, but it's actually ciudad, okay? Ciudad. One thing with the C as well is that if it's a C before an E or I, right? C before an E or I, like right here, E or I, and you have a C before it, you're gonna have that S kind of sound, right? That S sound, right? It's a sibilant, sibilant sound, something like that, right? An S. So it's gonna be a C or a se, right? C or se, like in ciudad, right? Ciudad. But in other vowels, if it's a C before other vowels, it's just gonna be pronounced as a hard K sound, right? K, as in con, right? Con, right? Cocacu, kokaku. But if it's cicu, C or se, right? It's gonna pronounce that S sound. Like ciudad will have that same C sound, right? C. The next thing is this the TIE, as in tierra and tiene. A lot of Chabacano speakers, again, subconsciously do this. They say chene, right? It's three syllables, tiene, tiene, right? Tiene, but they'll say chene. They'll just make it as one or two syllables instead of three. They'll shorten it, tiene, instead of, they'll say chene instead of tiene. They'll put a ch sound, a ch sound, a ch, right? But it's supposed to be a tia, a glide. You're supposed to have like a y kind of sound, tiene, yeah, instead of a ch, right? So they'll say something with along the lines of a chene instead of a tiene, or chera instead of tierra, right? Tierra. That's just, again, it's a changing. That's how the Chabacano speakers are just changing it, right? And again, I talked about the CI, right? The CI. So, for example, this again, like inspiración, I already talked about the sh, the c sound changing to a sh sound, right? C or C, right? The s changing to a sh sound, right? Sha or sho instead of sia or sio, right? The next thing I want to talk about is the J and the H, right? So this jota and ache, like the letters, right? They have different usages. Okay, so the J in Chavacano will always be pronounced as a ha sound, like an English H sound, ha ha ha, right? It's a pharyngeal sound, ha, right? That all the air you're just sighing out. That's like an English H, and the H doesn't get pronounced in Chavacano. So iha is not hiha, right? For example, iha is not pronounced as hiha, right? This is a good word to have a pronunciation with. So the pronunciation H is always silent, but the J makes the ha sound. Okay, the English H sound. Another word, tehera, ha. That J makes the h sound. It doesn't make the j sound, right? That j. No. Unless it was borrowed from another language. So diutay is diutay, not jutay, okay? That word, a lot of Chabacano speakers, again, will make it so that it sounds like a j, but it's actually a dia, D-I-Y, dia, not a j. They'll crunch all of that into one syllable instead of two. The V and the B make different sounds in Chabacano, or they make the same sounds, right? But when Chabacano speakers subconsciously see the V, they pronounce it like an English V, an English V sound. Again, a lot of English influence is coming into that Chabacano language, and that's what's changing the pronunciation of Chabacano. The V sound is getting pronounced like an English V, and the B sound is getting pronounced the same, just a B. But in Chabacano they don't distinguish it. It's the same. It's supposed to be the same sound, the B sound, like the B, a soft B, right? Just for example, ventana. It's spelled the same way. Ventana as in Spanish, ventana or binta, right? Binta, B. Or this word here, nuevo. That V makes a B sound. It's soft B sound, right? The next thing I want to talk here about is the G, the letter G. As in with the letter C, if it's a G before I and E, it's going to make the H sound, the J, the H sound. So he or he. Like geometria is a G-E-O, geometria. G before an I or an E makes the H sound in English, H, right? He. But if there's a U in between, it makes a G, it keeps that G sound, that G sound, right? If it's before other vowels that are not I or E, it's gonna have that sharp G sound, G, ga, gu, go. But if you want to make that sharp G sound with an I or an E, gi or get, you have to put a U, a GU. Otherwise, it's gonna be pronounced as a he or he, right? Just like that J sound. The letter R is, again, with English influence that's coming into Chabacano. That R sound, Chabacano speakers like to it, right? They're gonna have that retroflex, the that American R, that American retroflexed R for that rhotic sound. But since Chabacano substrate language is Spanish, it's gonna originally be a trilled r sound, that R. For example, this word here, triste, is how it's pronounced, triste, but Chabacano speakers will have a tendency to say triste, tra, right? They have that tendency when it's supposed to be a tr. Another one here is pero, right? Another one is pero, but Chabacano speakers, because of English influence, they'll have a tendency to pronounce it as pero, instead of pero, or para, right? Or another one with this one, incontra, right? Or this one, tejera. You hear the difference? There's that R sound, diversidad, diversidad, the sound. Inspiración, or as a Chavacano speaker would probably say, inspiración. But it's supposed to be inspiración, right? That r sound, it's supposed to be trilled, not retroflexed. R, right? Not And the final ones I want to talk about is the ñ, that ñ sound. So the ny sound, the ñ, sometimes in Chavacano orthography gets pronounced as a ni, or they'll add it as, or they'll spell it as an ni or ny when it's spelled ñ, right? And this is just all pronounced the same. So ñ, right? Nya, ni, ñu, ño, nya, ni, yeah. It has that ñ kind of sound. They all sound the same, but you'll see in Chabacano that some words that came from Spanish are spelled with an ny instead of ñ, or ni instead of an ñ. And the last thing are the vowels here, the ie and the ou. Sometimes, again, like with this ñ, from Spanish to Chabacano, the words with the vowels get altered. So sometimes if it's spelled originally with an I, it gets spelled with an E, and vice versa. If it's an E, sometimes it'll get spelled with an I. Same with the O to U, vice versa. They'll switch the O and the U around. So they will change up the orthography sometimes. But these, again, are just some things I want to talk about. I also want to talk about the letter Q. The letter Q as in que, right? It's always going to be with a U in Chabacano. Q is always with the letter U. That Q, U, E, that Q, U will always be together. And other than that, I have no other things to talk about this. I hope